And with that, I'm going to segue into our next performer, actually guest artist. I was looking at it when he was setting up his work, and it just said spirit, spirit, love, love. And I'm like, yes, 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 I want to know more about this guy, you know, and I'm sure that you guys want to know more about him. So I'm going to tell you more about him. He's a graphic artist and broadcaster by training who expanded into fine art painting back in 1999. Colorful and playful with a strong element of storytelling, his work blends a primitive and simplistic innocence with a confident eye for color and shape. Amen. Joe's work expresses a range of emotions, from the special bonds of love and friendship to the importance of internal reflection. His soul talk is called Begin Again. Please welcome Joe Zaniker.
So how many of you have had a life experience that just takes you to your knees? Raise your hands. Yeah, welcome to the club. Ain't it great? So my talk today really is about, this painting is the basis for this talk, and it is about living and living and living and hitting breakdown and having that little space in the moment where you're at choice about where you're going to go with it. And that making the choice to begin again is always the strongest choice. So I work with someone who has this kind of way of looking at the world, and she calls it the pony in the pile of poo. And I will tell you, pony in the pile of poo isn't what I wanted to say. I would use the S word, but I'm trying to not use the S word or the F word. However, I don't trust anybody who doesn't use the F word at least once a year. So there's these two little boys who get brought into this stall, this horse stall, one at a time. And the first little boy is walked into the stall, and there is this massive heaping pile of steaming poo. Flies, it's hot, and they're in this horse stall. And the first boy walks in, and he's hit with the smell and the sight of it, and it just wigs him out, and he jets. The second little boy is brought in, and he has the same initial reaction, but then he puts his fingers up to his nose, and he starts to walk around the pile of poo. And then he looks up kind of quizzically at the person who brought him in, and he says, "Where's the pony?" Because he assumes that if he's in there, in this horse stall, and there's this pile of horse poo, that there must be a pony and it must be for him. And that's the attitude that really I was introduced to a few years ago, and as I've begun to choose it, it has changed me. My take is that painting and spirituality and creativity and relationship and business, the things of life, are really all there to help me come back into who I really am. And who I really am is a beloved child of God. Now, my name for God is Big Love. That's what I call it.
All right.
And so the other thing that I've noticed is that every single time I have one of these breakdowns, I always seem to have a friend or a loved one or a guide or someone who's there to help me back up. And I think we all do all the time. We just sometimes go so, at least I did, I went so inside that I couldn't see that they were right there for me. My life as an artist began in 1997. My partner at the time was an actor. And we were in Santa Cruz, and he was there working in the summer as an actor. And we were out to breakfast one morning, and we were sitting at this little two-top. And there was this painting up and to the left. And he was sitting there, and I was sitting here, and I just couldn't stop looking at it. So he went up for the day to rehearse. It was a 12-hour day for him. And I went to the art store, and I got a board and a piece of conson paper and a kid's set of pastels. And I went out to this place in Santa Cruz. You may have been to it. It's that with that winding walkway that has the built-in benches and where the surfers surf. So I'm there, and I went into this, what I can only describe as a trance. Now this is going to be an important part of the story, because this has happened twice. So the first time it happened, I'm sitting there, I go into this space, and I paint for a couple hours. Now I'm sporting the same hairdo that I am today, and a couple hours later, I was really, really burned. And I kind of came out of it, and I realized all these people were around me, watching me, and I got really, really self-conscious. And I went home, put it on the kitchen table, and I don't even know what I did, and then I went to bed. He gets home about midnight, and he wakes me up and he said, "Did you do that painting?" And I said, "Yeah." And I had recreated the painting that I had seen in the restaurant. And he said, "You need to do more." I was like, okay. So the next day I got up and I did 2 more paintings. And they were horrible. Horrible. Breakdown, right? I can't do this. What was I thinking? How I have no business doing this, right? Now, that conversation was not a new conversation, right? This was a very old, well-worn, well-practiced conversation that I was having inside. And you do that long enough, and you begin to believe that you are a mistake. And I did, right? So the breakdowns, there was no connection to beginning again. It was just breakdown, there must be something wrong with me. Breakdown, there must be something wrong with me. Because I didn't have the begin again part yet. So my take on this is that this cycle of breakdown and beginning again is really a language of God. I think it's one of the ways that Big Love gets my attention and helps me back into what's actually true. So fast forward a year, it's 1998, and we're driving from Marin into San Francisco, and we had this experience where there was a bank of fog going up over the hills, and it was literally about a mile ahead of us, and it was just literally eclipsing cars as they went into it, like they just disappeared. It was fantastic. And when we got into it, we were either stopped or going about 1 mile an hour. So it gave us some time to talk. Now my partner's a little stealthy. He looks a little shy, but he's pretty stealthy. And from the passenger seat, he says, "Sweetheart, how come you haven't been painting?" And I'm like, I'm just not a painter, and I don't, it's not for me. He said, I don't ask a lot of you, and I ask you to do one thing for me. Now, he has never really said anything to me, and at that point, we've been together about 3.5 years, going on 4 years. He said, "I want you to get a book called The Artist's Way. And I want you to promise me that you'll do it, and just trust me and just go for it." And I said, "Okay, why?" He said, "Because I don't think you're ever going to be happy until you get that you're an artist. I don't think you're ever going to get that." So I did. And I began to paint again, and again, I didn't know what else to do, so I was copying what I was seeing other people doing, because this chameleon-like behavior in me was something that I adopted from about the age of 5. From the moment I got to school, I became really expert at sensing what you need and being able to give that to you, and sensing what you need and being able to give that to you, and showing up that way. So I never showed up as me. I showed up in who I thought you needed to be so everything would be okay. Well, this was what was happening, right, in a microcosm in doing my art. And the more I did it, the hollower it felt. It was really, really not satisfying. Anybody identify with that? Yeah. So I had this, what can only be described as a breakdown, this moment where I went into his office, he was composing under headsets, big tears in my eyes, and I said, I am such a fake. And he said, "Sweetheart, let me ask you a question. What do you have to say?" What do you have to say? And that was it. And I had lots of things to say. I had things to say about where I'd grown up and how I'd grown up. I had things to say about what it felt like to feel different. I had things to say about what it felt like to have some hope that there was something special in me. And so I started painting those things. So remember when I talked about the trance? I went into a trance again, and I was painting this piece. And it was supposed to be an acrylic piece, and at the time I had this easel, and I had 2 TV trays, and one of them was set up with oil pastels, and the other one was set up with chalk pastels. And I had this acrylic painting in front of me that was meant to be an acrylic painting, but I went into this weird space again. I lost track of time. It was somewhere between 3.5 and 4 hours. And I stood for so long that I actually had to start rocking to get my arms, my legs to wake back up. But while I was in it, I had grabbed an oil pastel and started to rub on the acrylic. And then when I realized what I'd done, I was like, ooh. So I grabbed this rag and started to wipe it off, but it did this really cool thing. So I kept going. So I grabbed some more oil pastels and I started doing it. So I go into University Art and I said, so I've done this oil pastel on this acrylic painting, and she goes, oh, I can't do that. I was like, but I already did. And so we argued, like literally for like 60 seconds, which doesn't sound like a long time, but it is when you're arguing back and forth. And so I said, look, if someone were to just coat an oil pastel painting with something to protect it, like what would they coat it with? And she said, well, you go this. I'm like, great, I'll take a can of that. So I went home and I sprayed it, and it worked, right? So out of the breakdown was this opportunity to begin again, right? That was a choosing point. And that was one of the first times in my life where I got, oh my gosh, keep going. Like, who cares if it's a mistake? You've already ruined the painting. Keep going. And it gave birth to this process that I don't see a lot of people do. I've never seen anybody else do it. And it's such a gift. I'm very, very grateful for that. So now let's fast forward to, when life gives you an experience that's so painful, like the kind where it actually hurts to even touch your body. It's bad enough. I had that experience when my father died. I didn't know grief could actually hurt you, but it does. And recently I had a girlfriend who has a beautiful daughter. And she died unexpectedly. And her dying process involved her mother and her surviving sister making the choice to let her go. And I went to bed that night and I cried for Francie, and I cried for Lindsay, and I cried for Kenzie. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up by this dream. And it was really, really, so here's the deal. If God asks you to do something, just do it. You are not going to get to go back to sleep until you follow through. And that was my experience. I kept wanting to sleep. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I was so exhausted. I wanted to sleep. And it was not going to happen. So I got up. I sketched it really quick. What I sketched was exactly what I painted. And it's this piece right here. So Kenzie is here, right? And she's now in this space where God is coming from nothing and from everything, right? She's back with it. But her love and who she is as a person is still living in us. It's still living in her mother, and it's still living in her sister. And we talked for about 3 hours about what this process was like. And all of a sudden, her mom just stopped, and she got this look on her face. And I was like, what? And she said, did you know Kenzie was an organ donor? And I said, oh my goodness, no. She said, yeah, 5 people. 5 people got her.
Wow.
Right?
Oh, wow.
So that was the first moment where I went, woo. Right? Like, that was not a conscious thing. It could have been 3, it could have been 7, it could have been any number. But it wasn't. It was 5. Because it was a gift for Francie. This was something meant for her. The the thing that I'm starting to see more and more is that this process of breaking down and beginning again, and breaking down and beginning again, is perfectly imperfect. Like it is exactly how the game is set up. And the game is meant to be won every single time. And the thing that allows me to win the game is to choose that this is happening for me. It isn't happening to me. And the more I choose that, the faster I can see the pony out of the Thanks.
Amazing, and we had the director of Sierra Donor Services gave a soul talk in February, and you listened to that talk.
I did.
Yeah. So that was like an aha, goosebump, whatever deep moment of revelation in my stuff.
I listened to it the morning Francie came over.
Wow.
So I've been listening to Soul Talks as I paint, because I can't paint in silence, so I'm always listening to TED Talks or Soul Talks. So I was listening to that morning. Francie comes over to the house for lunch, and right. So it was. I mean, yeah, you can't make this stuff up. It's awesome.
Who wants to compliment Joe?
Well, you rock. What really got me was the what do you have to say? What do you have to say? And then more specifically, I would take that to what does God want to say through you? So thank you for that, because I've been kind of struggling with that a little bit. So that was very helpful, and you're amazing.
And back here, who's going to raise their hand? Gail Darren.
I want to be like you when I grow up. What I acknowledge about you is the incredible heart that you have. And I just want to share a really brief story. When my dog was dying, Joe came to me and he said, "What are you waiting for?" He said, "Most people suffer that they let their animal suffer too long." And then he asked for a picture of her, and he did the most amazing painting for me. And I greet that love every morning. I give thanks. Thank you.
I'm sure somebody over here has a thought or a compliment.
I have a circle of friends where we often say that we are God with skin on. So I'm happy to know and say that you are big love with skin on.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say what a beautiful talk that was, and we could just feel that beautiful heart of yours, so thank you. It was inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. From the bottom of my heart to the bottom of my feet. You certainly are love.